we're live. Timer is up, so now I gotta talk. Alright, so Clashers. Live streams are somewhat canceled for now. And I'm gonna explain it to you right now. I don't want you guys to be like, oh, damn it. He's not doing the GTA 5 live stream. He's not doing the Far Cry 4 live stream. Hold your horses, people. I cannot multitask when it comes to online shit. I can't. I mean, I could probably do it in real life, but when it comes to like gaming and shit, I can't do that. I'm primarily focusing on one thing. That one thing is the DarkNights Universe. Yes, and yes, I'm doing it again. What I mean by again is that I said yes again. That's the third time. Reason for that is yes, I did finish. And secondly, the lore is kind of vague at the beginning. So now, I have a new document that goes deeper since I have everything together, since I have everything piled up together in the second document. I'm doing this document which fully dives deeper and more more complex lore. For example, if you want to know more about the night between the early 1970s, between 1971 and 1975, which was the date of Fred Fox Family Diner, or as shortly called Fred Fox Diner, you would have to go to the extended lore and the lore mysteries, which will give you a more deep dive section. And I call that as a failure. Reason I call it a failure was, one, you have to manually go from each page to find where you have to look. And secondly, you have to make sure to read back. You have to scroll all the way up to where the beginning of the lore begins, or to the lore back up to the canon lore where it begins with Fred Fox Diner to get a more stabilized area. This time, since I have way more functionality with the story, I'm now turning that into a 2-page section. So now, instead of having one page to read off of where it's like vague, I'm given a full breakdown, especially the geopolitics of the DarkNights Universe, which that will be the extended lore, as will other things too. The extended lore is primarily focusing on each location, which also does give very vague statements, especially the hallucinating gas, which was a busted pipe, funnily enough, due to the building being settled upon a land area where the United States government was building interesting things in Georgia. I guess the government was experimenting on hallucinating gas, which makes sense given how in the DarkNights Universe it takes a divergence from our own, kinda, but it still keeps that historical remnants, if I may say. Especially during what we will call as the Vietnam War, but as the Dark Knights call it, as a paranoia. Because in the Dark Knights Universe, it never explicitly states that Vietnam was ever invaded, nor was Cuba, nor any mention of John F. Kennedy being assassinated, the moon landed, etc. It never states that, so that's why the extended lore will be different in the restructured version of the lore, since it will state way more into politics than it was into restaurants, because this time I'm making sure I'm putting as much detail, as much focus on each location as possible. So the extended lore and the mysteries are kept sort of differently compared to how they are in the original document. So yes, there'll be the original document, but that'll be soon deleted once I'm finished with the structured lore. Yes, this video might be long because I'm trying to tell you everything that I could possibly tell you without having to spoil a lot of details. This video might be one of the biggest involvements of the DarkNights Universe, called the DNU. Funnily enough, there might be another name that has associated with DNU, but I'm not sure of that. I may have watched a movie or something that has that sort of title, but who cares? Might be a old video or old movie anyways. Also, what I'm doing is what I'm trying to do is trying to contact YouTubers, especially ones that I've watched, like FNAF lore, especially YouTubers that go on horror and shit. Trying to comment on their latest videos to be like, hey, can you look into the DarkNights Universe? I have a whole document about it. Can you do a lore breakdown of it? Because I really want to get this popular. I want to have people be involved in this. I want to make this interesting because I'm really trying to be a good writer. I'm trying to express my art in making stories, lore, countries, environments and shit. The DarkNights Universe is perfectly in the line of, it was inspired by FNAF, but its timeline is so divergent from our own and from its own FNAF, or from FNAF, etc. I don't know what I say. What did I even say that last line? But it's so different compared to FNAF since it takes such a different route, but it was inspired by FNAF. That it could basically be its own story. Yes, it takes some parts like FNAF, like the animatronics, souls and shit, possession, animatronic suits and shit. But technology-wise, it's way, way different. Way different. Especially how everything is progressed. Especially the characters, which, yes, I did not do what other people, or actually, I did not go the route that Scott Cawthon did by reusing the same name. Kinda. I did reuse some names, but they are used as either middle or last names of other characters. But since there's not as many human... Let me rephrase that. There's not as many human characters in the story. That means that there'll be more characters that has less of the same reused name than the other one. Plus, having less human characters basically focused all attention on the animatronics itself. Especially the antagonist, protagonist, side characters, and other deity or spirits or something like that. Going full in. Because the DarkNights Universe, it primarily focuses on a multi-generation. It goes from 1971 all the way to the end of the 2020s. Primarily 2029, where everything ends. Yes, there will be extra lore. Yes, there will be extended lore. Yes, there will be the after events, which will take place after the mainline story was completed. So the extended lore will focus on geopolitics and other such detail that I have left or have not left in. as well the mystery lores will focus on the mysteries that people might have questioned about the lore and etc. And then we go on, and then after all of that, I will focus on the after hours, which primarily focuses on John's hell. Yes, John has his own personal hell, but it's fundamentally different from William Afton's hell. Because unlike William Afton, where he is tortured by a spirit, John is inherently being tortured by death. Yes, death as a character. He is not a saying that will just be around. No, he is a character. He's a very mysterious character, because I will never ever make a direct character lore on him, but I'll mention his powers, his abilities, what does he look like, what does he do, what are his goals, which will make Death the most interesting character in the Dark Knights universe, since, well, he is barely noticed until maybe when John is confronted by Death and he is offered immortality, but it was a catch, not as a saying. Because in reality, Death, one spoiler here, because when you do read the Dark Knight's lore, there will be a spoiler right here. If you don't want to be spoiled, you could just skip this part. Okay? Skip this part of the video. So, in 1994, Death inherently gained the appearance of Fred Fox. Fred Fox is a hybrid between a fox and a bear, given the name of Fred Fox. Very interesting name, but it definitely suits for something that's a hybrid of two different animals. Which, by Death's appearance, it's a lot more different compared to what John has in his constructions. Like, Death takes a darker approach to Fred Fox than what John has built, which definitely gives Death a much more defining character trait than most characters in the timeline. Now we're going to focus on this, though. Death confronts John because John lost almost everything in his life. His wife left him after being so absurdly in love with drinking a lot, due to him seeing his dead son killed in the machine that he created. Which, that's another spoiler. Kinda. So once Death confronted John, Death did not really confront him, but sort of made him a deal, in which would be a curse than rather be a blessing. Because unlike other horror characters, immortality is seen as a curse than a profitable of blessing. Because death is the one that brings immortality, but he does it with a catch. Death offers John the ability to resurrect his son, which is a bit more absurd to cases, but we'll get to that later on. So John accepts the deal. The reason for that is because he is no longer compelling to refuse the offer, because he really just wants to bring back this thing that he wishes he kept loving. Because Howard left the family and Albert, between, I think it was like 1978, left the family at the age of 15, which is odd, but probably was seemingly normal at the time in the 1970s, if I give or take, given how parents are, or given how parents were back in the day. There was multiple murders between 1978 to 1983. There were 16 total murders during that time. Each body had an animatronic piece inside the mouth of the victim, which these parts were stolen these parts were stolen because they weren't particularly, like, the police were like confused of where the hell did these parts coming from, because they saw these and they were like, what the fuck kind of murder is this? And they turned to realize that it was stolen pieces from animatronic parts that John had cooped up in his garage. So they went to John, they interrogated him to see if he was the killer. Turned to find out that no, he wasn't the killer, it was his son. So the police had direct information of where Albert was, and where Albert was headed when he was being pursued by the police. Now, yes, the Dark Knights Universe has a much direct detail of Albert's death. Like, it's so direct that I made it to where you might just not want to read the whole section of Albert's death, unless you're a big fan of Saw movies or any movie that has gory and horrific scenes. Then that might be your part. And Albert went into the abandoned diner, which I will not spoil in there because of what happened in 1975, which was nicknamed the Child Incident of 75, give or take. And when Albert, actually no, it was the Golden Diner, because actually I don't think he even knew. I don't think I've ever put in the story. Actually, no. I'm not gonna spoil much of you guys, but I'm actually gonna continue on the deaths deal with John, because I don't want to spoil it any further than what it has to be, because it's already like 17 minutes in. So when John accepted the deal, Albert and the springlock suit. Yes, John did construct a springlock suit. Mind you, it's a lot safer than fucking what William had, and what other fan-made projects had. I'm not joking. John did some real fucking engineering. Like, pristine engineering. Like, yes, these suits were spring locks, but at least they were fucking good. I'm being serious. And what Death did was pretty interesting. Pretty gruesome too. Because after Albert's death, he went to hell for his crimes. Death, after the deal with John, fucking went to hell, fucking grabbed Albert, pulled him out of hell, put him back into the fucking body that he was in. Well, the canned corpse, as you may will, in the springlock suit. Resurrected him, and instead of just leaving at that, Death purposely made his skin, flesh, and other materials in his body to fuse inside the suit, basically trapping Albert in the same that killed him, which was described as worse than hell itself, because unlike hell, Albert, in this case, Albert, John's son, might as well start calling fucking Albert that, John's son, because I keep on saying John. I'm being serious. Like, I cannot speak today. I cannot. Which, Yeah, that's pretty dark. I mean, it does. I mean, it does make sense why it's called the Dark Knights Universe. It takes a much darker tone than because I mean, if we took the FNAF games or something like that, where the Dark Knights Universe is meant to be a much darker depiction of what FNAF is. The Dark Knights Universe is fundamentally different than FNAF. If you take it literally, kinda. Like, if you take away like the FNAF and shit and other stuff, death, geopolitics, and other things make the Dark Knights universe so unique from other fan-made creations. And I'm gonna go on here. After Albert was fucking resurrected by death itself, because death made a promise to John that, hey, I'm gonna resurrect your son because you wanted to. You wanted to bring back your family, so I'm gonna do this for you. And that catch that Death did not mention to John was immortality. But not the kind of immortality that we are all thinking about. Death forcefully mind controlled John. No, I don't. I guess mind control, if you kind of think about it. But anyways, he made John go into the very suit that he created, which was the factory-made Fred Fox. Because John and Howard did made a factory called J&H, Fred Fox Entertainment Construction Factory, which, funnily enough, is an underground facility located in North Carolina. How fun is that? And since this other Fred Fox model, compared to the golden and the more original version, yes, there are different names for each animatronic given by the designation. Classic Fred Fox isn't just a name that I gave, it's a designation. We got the golden Fred Fox, which is a designation of its own. We got original Fred Fox, which was created in 1987 with the designation of original since classic was already used. And then we got the other version of Fred Fox, which never had an other name since it was just named Fred Fox. But unlike the other models, this one was right-handed. The other ones were left-handed. That's a very interesting detail because from 1971 all the way from 1987, left-handed Fred Fox was around during those periods. Until the right-handed version of Fred Fox was created in the underground facility. Interesting detail to put in there because unlike FNAF fan-made creations or nothing, it's always the right hand, but in this universe, left-handed was the primary dominant for Fred Fox as the animatronic. Funnily enough, he was never actually meant to be a leader. In between 1971 to 1975, Fred Fox was actually not the main leader. It was Bernard. Funnily enough for that. The very saying that named the franchise, which is Fred Fox's Family Entertainment, never actually had Fred Fox as the main person. Yeah, he was the star of the show, but he was the secondary character for about a couple of years now. Between 1971 to 1981. So like a 10-year period of Fred Fox being a non-leader until 1987, where he was propped to be the main leader of fucking 5 other animatronics plus the old golden animatronic or golden Fred Fox in the storage room, since that's where John had inherently transported him from the old location to the newer location, because he wanted to see if he could retrofit the design, but he never did. So the animatronic was stuck in there forever until the place was burned down in 1978. And the place never made it through a decade. I can tell you that. Like 9 years, the place was burned down. Like from 1987 to 1996, not even a full decade, it was already burned down. And 2 years after John's disappearance, because he was not found in his garage, he was relocated to the underground facility, because Death was like, hey, after I gave you immortality and forced you into your own suit, I'm going to drop you off with your creations that you're going to be stuck in there for 30 years or so. Or 30 or less years. Around like 28 or 29 years. So like not even like 30. Like bro was left down there for like not even 30 years. Actually, no, yeah, 30 years actually. Which basically meant that he was missing most of the time. Surprisingly enough, like Def kind of kept his suit very pristine. You can tell you that. Oh, well, basically the factory was already fucking done for in the 2000s. Howard didn't even have the funding to keep the factory in its prime when it was first built in a couple of years. Basically living in the factory unattended for 2 more decades until Franklin came along. Yes, the protagonist is named Franklin. That might confuse a lot of people, like, what the fuck? Is that Franklin from GTA 5? Actually, no. Before, actually, I used Franklin as a name ever since, like, I created a DarkNights Universe in middle school, but never got into around what his last and middle name were. Funny, interesting enough that every character in the DarkNights Universe has a full registered name. So if you want to call a person by their full name in the DarkNights Universe, you could literally just go and be like, oh, okay. Because look, in the DarkNights Universe, I want to make it as good as possible with other things too, like the full name of characters. But I don't want to just call someone like John or something. Like, that's lame. I called him John Smith Churchill or something, man. Or Howard Alexander Williams. Like, at least give him full names, damn it. I'm being serious. I swear though, not many people go full depth into characters like full names. It's just that like we going from like either first or first to middle name, never the full name, which is kind of funny actually. So that's basically all I have here today. I don't want to spoil anymore. I don't want to talk about it anymore because I'm still focusing on the reconstructed version of the story. So anyways, hope you enjoyed this video. I very much did. I like to explain a lot of things, but it kind of gets tired after a couple minutes of explaining. Especially my mouth being all dried up from talking too much. So I'll leave you all here. Clash on. Hope you all have a good day, good night, whatever. I'm not going to try to swear as much. But yes, live streams are going to be canceled for a few months or a few weeks or so. I'm trying to do my best to try and entertain you guys, but also trying to balance the fact that I also want to focus on the Dark Knights, since I'm already into FNAF again. That has given me so much emphasis to redo the Dark Knights. Because good lord, man. Once I do the reconstructed version, I'm gonna try to contact the YouTubers again to get their attention and be like, hey, I could send you the email of this document. Can you do a lore breakdown? Can you share it to the world, please? Because I know you guys are have millions of subscribers, and that will be enough for some to have at least somewhat of a small audience that would probably enjoy this, especially the whole cinematic universe of the DarkNights Universe taking place in a divergence of our own, given that the geopolitical spectrum is a lot different, since it never fully goes into detail about that in the original story. So, anyways, thank you all for enjoying. Thank you all for being here. If you are here, please comment that. I don't want to be here alone. Please. Anyways, clash on, guys, and I will see you all in next time. Good.